Hello YouTube. In one of my most recent posts I made this Jabba the Hutt with his throne and all his bits and bobs, but it didn't feel quite complete, and that's because I need to make his little pet Salacious. A lot of my students said that I should make a sort of reclining, scantily clad Princess Leia, but I don't tend to make humans, I just really like making creatures. So Salacious, this is just a little wire armature. I've just used 2mm aluminium wire. It's really easy to twist around itself just to get this kind of rough overall shape. You can see I've got his two arms, two legs, main body which is really twisted round itself, and then the extra wire for his tail. You can see here that I haven't got much of this wire left, so I'm going to have to order myself some at some point. Normally when I buy it, I end up buying like hundreds of meters of the stuff so that I've got enough to last me for ages. Okay, normally when I use Milliput, I use Milliput Standard or Milliput Silver Grey. Those are the main two that I use, but on this one, because he's a small figure, I decided to use Superfine White. Superfine White's a bit more expensive, but you get a much kind of smoother finish to it. It's a much, I think, denser kind of milliput as well. It feels heavier to me. Okay, so you can see I just bulked in the main shape. Just with his face there, I just kind of squeezed those edges just to get those two bits to kind of stick out where his cheeks are. And then quite a thick neck, uh, blob there for his belly, another blob for his sort of chest area, and then I just started bulking out the arm and the leg on one side and just the tail. The nice thing with Milliput, of course, is after it's set, you can sand it down if you need to as well to refine it even more. If you haven't used Milliput before, it's a two-part putty. You mix the two parts together in equal amounts and it sets rock hard at room temperature in about 4 hours. Right, I made this little cushion for him as well. I just did it as a flat sort of disc to start with. Then I've added more of the Milliput on top to get this kind of soft cushion effect. You can see here on the figure I've added more Milliput on his arm and his leg on the other side. And in this cushion I've got dips. So I've got a main dip for his bottom to go in and a couple of dips for the legs to sort of slot into as well. Right, this is just a bit of Hessian from one of those bags that you get from the supermarket. And you can see what I'm doing is just pushing it onto the milliput while it's soft. And that gives me the texture straight away. It just prints it on. What's really nice about that is then later when I paint it, I can really get that texture to come out even more. Right, with the body and the arms and the legs and the tail hardened, I started putting in more detail. So you can see how I'm building up the neck textures with lots of thin kind of layers of milliput, lots of creases and things put into that. Then I've done his lower jaw first and then his upper jaw. And you can see that's all working pretty well. It's not very refined yet, but I can add more to it later on after this has dried. I may just be imagining this, but it always seems to me like the superfine white milliput dries perhaps a little bit quicker than the standard. Okay, you can see on the face here, I've been adding textures and things underneath the eyes. The eyes were just a couple of balls that I had that had already set, and you can see that was standard milliput. You can see the colour of the eyes. And I put those just onto some soft bits of the superfine white, pressed them in. So that gives that kind of like eyelid kind of surround to the eyes. But yeah, those little bits and pieces on the head have already started to kind of take effect. You can see I put a couple of wires in, so I drilled a couple of holes, put the wires in for his ears, and then started moulding those over the top. I'm using various kind of small screwdrivers and things as tools, but also little tiny ball stylus tools as well, just to get all the different textures. Other features to mention are obviously the eyebrow ridges and all the kind of folds above the eyes, and then also that little bit just above his nose. Right, this is the first of the painting stages. You can see with the cushion, I've painted it this sort of dark grey colour as my kind of base coat. I want it to be a kind of a maroon sort of colour overall. With Salacious, I've just gone in with yellow ochre mixed with white, and I've also added a little bit of that grey colour that I used for the cushion just to kind of neutralise him a little bit. He was just a bit too bright otherwise. And that seems to have worked just as a base coat, and then I can start working into this with a bit of a wash of a darker colour over the top. I'm using System 3 acrylic paints to do all of the painting stages on this. Right, the next stage was to dry brush on the cushion a kind of a light maroon colour. And you can see, because I've dry brushed it on, that darker grey colour still remains underneath in all the dark places. So it really starts to give it some nice texture. And yeah, really pleased with that. What I'll probably do is put a layer of PVA glue on the top of that as well to kind of stop it from scratching off in the future. Right, on Salacious, what I did is I took some of that base colour that I used for the cushion, which is that kind of greyish colour, and I just really watered that down. So when it's really watery, you just brush it all on really liberally over the whole lot, and then you just take a little bit of kitchen paper and you just dab out on the top. So you can see so far this is my kind of plate of colours. So that cream colour was for his base colour. Then we've got that grey colour, we've got that maroon colour that I've just put on the cushion, and then this slightly lighter maroon colour, which just was with a bit of white added, and that's just made the cushion even brighter. Right, next he needed some kind of orangey hint on him. So I mixed this colour here with yellow ochre, a little bit of red added to it to make it orangey. And again, I've really watered that down, and I've just put it like on the edges of his face here, the tips of his ears, inside his actual ears, like near his head. I've done a bit on his shoulders, you can probably just about see it. Doesn't show up particularly well in this video. Put a bit on the top of his head as well. I am going to put fur and stuff on later as well, but I've done some on the tip of his tail. Like I say, this all the way around his neck area. You can see that a bit more clearly. And then I've just done little bits just on each finger, just above where the claw's going to go. And then just on the wrists as well. Little bit inside his leg there. Little bit just on his ankles. And then again, that just where the claw meets the toe on each toe. It's much easier to blend paint, obviously, if it's really quite watery. So you can just build up layer after layer and make it stronger if you need to. Okay, the next stage was to add some sort of maroony, sort of pinky colour. This was for the inside of his mouth. And what I've done is put it right on the inside there. Again, I made it quite watery so you can see all the details still in his mouth. You can see all the darkest colour still remains in all those deep places. I did water down that kind of pinkish colour as well. I made it really watery, and I don't know if the camera's picking this up very well at all, but there are little hints of it kind of all over him. And I really like doing this with my kind of creatures and things because they can look quite flat if you're not careful. But obviously he's got all of the darks from that sort of really dark grey colour. He's got all of the lights from the original cream colour, but little hints of the orange and little hints of pink all over him as well. It just makes him look a lot more fleshy, and it does show up better in real life. Right, with the eyes, can you see I used this lemon yellow? If you look at the eye on the left, it's nowhere near as good as the eye on the right. That's because the eye on the right has had two coats. The one on the left has only had one coat, and lemon yellow is pretty transparent, so quite often you have to build up at least a couple of coats. Okay, I raided my Lego collection and managed to find a few chains. Unfortunately, most of them were just these really tiny ones. I had one reasonably good length one, but most were tiny. So they're quite easy to kind of snip the links with wire cutters, and then you can slot on another link, and you can end up with a nice long chain like this without much effort at all. I did consider making a chain from scratch using Milliput to do each link, but can you imagine? There's quite a lot of links there. I think it would have been quite tedious work. So going with the idea of using a Lego chain, definitely the best bet. Next, I took this tube from inside some aluminium foil and I just cut the end off using this Tamiya craft saw. I've had this saw for so many years and I don't know why, but I have never bought a new blade for it. And they're only about £5 for a new blade. So I finally bought one and it makes such a difference. It's so nice having a sharp blade again. Right, you can see that I have linked this bit of Lego chain on and I've cut like a slot at the back of that bit of tube so that I can kind of put it around his neck. Okay, painted the whole thing black to start with, and then if you dry brush silver over the top, if you haven't done dry brushing before, take some silver paint on your brush, dry it on a bit of kitchen paper so it's almost completely dry, and then just kind of dust it onto your black thing, and it makes it look like it's made of metal. It's a really cool effect. Okay, this is him all finished, and you can see I've painted like his beak black, and then I've dry brushed a little bit of grey onto it. I've also added a little bit of UV resin onto his beak to make it look really shiny. I've used UV resin in his eyes as well. You just paint it on, it's like a sort of a clear liquid, and then you shine a UV torch on it, and it makes it go hard, and it just remains really shiny. Okay, you can see I painted his claws as well. I did it dark grey and then light grey for some highlights on the claws. There's his little chain, all looking pretty like it's made of metal, which is really cool. And you can see I've added loads of bits of fluff as well, like fur, which I just snipped individual bits and then I just used super glue to stick them all on. So I did a little bit on the top of his head. I did a little bit around his kind of neck area, a bit on his tail, bits on the tips of his ears and the tips of his cheeks as well. And that's all making him look a lot more kind of realistic, I think. This is the bit you've probably all been waiting for, to see what he looks like sitting on the throne with Jabba the Hutt. And I think you'll agree that it sort of completes the image. So here's Jabba. Just in case you didn't see him in the last video, I'll just give you a little close-up look at him. I was quite pleased with him. Again, look, UV resin in the eyes. That's what makes his eyes look really nice and shiny. There's little Salacious. I probably have made him a bit bigger than he would be actually in the movie and things, but that's okay. I was trying to get an effect of Jabba the Hutt looking a little bit like he does in Return of the Jedi, combined with how he looks on the Kenner playset from the 80s, because I've got that playset and it's very nostalgic for me. Can you see here? The chain, I just put a little Lego stud on there, glued it on. So this means that I can put the chain on and off whenever I want, and I can remove Salacious, and then I can take him. Like I'm going to take him in to show my students. Um, so it's quite nice to be able to remove that from the throne. What's really cool as well is obviously Salacious can be moved about on the throne. He doesn't have to sit exactly where he is. I can put him wherever I want. The chain is pretty long, so it allows me to position him like this, for example. Anyway, I'm really pleased with how this one's turned out. It ties in really well with my Rebo band and Gamorrean Guard and other stuff that I've made from Star Wars. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe to see anything that I post up in the future. Thanks to MILLIPUT for sponsoring this channel. I would not be able to do these videos without them, so big thanks. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.